We all have a teacher, whether from elementary, middle or high school, that we're particularly fond of. Perhaps they were extra cool to us, or maybe they just had a way of teaching that worked for us in our brains at the time. For me, that teacher was Mr. Irwin. He taught me 10th and 11th grade math and science, but spent half the lessons talking about life lessons. We all treated him as part of our group, even though he was part of the faculty. He also coached football. I hadn't played that, but I heard he was fantastic at it, despite his stature. His classroom was on the top floor, and especially on Friday afternoons, just before school let out, if you had his class, you knew you could relax, because late on Fridays he never taught. When people see their past teachers after they leave school, they do their best to avoid them most of the time. Well, not me. Not with Mr. Irwin. I ran into him early one morning at a local coffee place, and since we both had time to spare, we sat at a booth and caught up on the last decade and a quarter. As we spoke, I couldn't help thinking that he looked much older now. He couldn't have been more than 30 when I left school, but now he seemed around 50 at least. He no longer teaches at Danes High. I asked him why. After some hesitation and a long sip of black coffee, he told me the following pleasant story that quickly spiraled into something menacing. Danes High has always prided itself on offering superb farewell trips for its seniors. A week down in Florida one year, a week in California the next. The trips were always around spring break. 2 teachers tagged with the group of students. During my final year, our outing had been to the Grand Rocky Mountains, but I hadn't gone because of finances. Many kids miss out because of the expenses, even with the school paying a quarter as a farewell gift. Anyway, these farewell trips stopped 5 years after I graduated. They only recently restarted. That infamous trip that had halted all other outings began normally. Mr. Irwin sat at the front of the bus. Mrs. Tiles, a teacher who hadn't been at Danes High during my years there, was also there. Mr. Irwin was tired after waking up at 5 that morning. The school governing body wanted them both to be present when the sleek-looking black and blue Travis Company bus arrived at 6. By 7:15, the first students had slowly started trickling in. They were on the road at 8:10. Only 10 minutes behind schedule. Mr. Irwin dozed off, stirring to mutterings from the bus driver. Still half asleep, he asked the man to repeat himself. The roaring engine and constant chatter from other kids made it difficult to hear. The bus driver had said that he needed to stop and refuel. Mr. Irwin told him, no problem. Minutes later, they stopped at a gas station. Mr. Irwin looked around, feeling euphoric, maybe from his lack of sleep or perhaps from the scenery. But probably a combination of both. Nothing but fields and trees surrounded them. In the distance rose a few mighty and intimidating-looking mountains. He took a deep breath, enjoying the vibrant and luscious air. Some kids rushed over to the nearby shop to stock up on snacks and most likely to see if they could buy some booze. Josh and Rich, the 2-star athletes on the football team, approached him. Josh asked when they would arrive at camp, to which Mr. Irwin replied, an hour. Rich stared at the surroundings with wide eyes. Mr. Irwin laughed. He enjoyed the athlete's awed expression. Jill and her boyfriend Mitch joined the conversation. Jill said she thought it was creepy being all the way out there. Mitch told her it wasn't creepy and that he was there to protect her. At this, Mr. Irwin rolled his eyes. Jill climbed off the stationary bus at the camp, not looking impressed. Mr. Irwin tried cheering her up by telling her they would have a great time there, but she wasn't buying it. She walked over to Mitch. The rest of the class had already gotten off. Mitch asked what they would do there. Smiling, Mr. Irwin told him that evening they were going to hike up to Old Camper's Cave, a challenging hike, but very doable. He gazed around the camp while Jill and Mitch walked off. An inviting, blue-watered lake sat in the near distance. 2 middle-aged men stepped forward, the camp coordinators. Mr. Irwin shook their hands and greeted them. The sun was beating down. Introducing the 2 coordinators to the group was virtually impossible. Kids were scattered all over the place. A small group meandered away, sharing a bottle of something. Mrs. Tiles apologized to the 2 coordinators for the class's rudeness, but they only laughed, telling her not to worry about it. While hiking among misshapen roots, awkward rocks, and slippery terrain on his trek to Old Camper's Cave, Mr. Irwin thought of the 60-odd teenagers entrusted to him. Responsibility had never been his forte, but these teenagers, practically adults, were more than competent to care for themselves. A group consisting mostly of athletes caught up with him halfway up. He took this opportunity to imbue some knowledge onto them, telling them that, in a few years, they'd all wish they could be seniors in high school again. Jill said, "Yeah, right," not believing him. Mr. Irwin ignored her, telling them that this was the last carefree summer for them before life showed them all the crap it had in store. So, his advice was to make the most of it. They eventually all made it to the cave, which turned out to be a crepuscular cave. More than a few kids possessed scrapes and bruises when they arrived. Several were more than half drunk. They started the hike a little past 6 and reached their destination by 7:30. Mr. Irwin stared in amazement at the towering cliffs above the cave, having a random thought of how it must feel to fall from the top of them. He saw Mrs. Tiles with a group of girls, laughing and joking with them. The two camp coordinators, Matt and Scotty, had hiked up to the cave while the group was enjoying an early dinner back at camp and started a fire. Mr. Irwin rubbed his hands together and thanked them for starting the fire. Scotty gazed from the flames and told him this was nothing yet. It would get much colder. And it did. Even long pants and a thick sweater couldn't stop Mr. Irwin from shivering uncontrollably. And even cocooned in a sleeping bag, the sand-ridden hard ground made it almost impossible to fall asleep. But, somehow, he eventually did. Disoriented, he awoke in the middle of the night to rustling sounds and movement in the surrounding woods. His sleeping bag was by the edge of the clearing. His blurry eyes detected a pair of red eyes in the trees. This sent his heart thumping, but he didn't dare move or make a sound. Frigid air swam and floated around him. The brilliant fire that had burned while he fell asleep was almost dead. He lay motionless, staring at the red eyes, his mind rushing with what to do next. How he would keep everyone safe if the eyes belonged to some predator? He wondered whether anything could even be done against a mountain lion or something similar. Before he knew what was happening, a devilish whisper drilled into his mind, casting horrors and sadistic screams of agony. These whispers paralyzed him, threatening harm against him. He lay there for an unknown time, minutes, maybe even hours. When he came back to his sanity, the red, predatory eyes had vanished. He blinked hard several times. His heart still thumped in his chest as he clenched his sleeping bag. More rustling and branches snapping impacted his ears. Mr. Irwin felt like shutting his eyes and forgetting everything. However, his potent sense of responsibility whacked him right then. Despite his confused terror, he would get up and check around. He had to. Shaking and telling himself he was crazy, he silently staggered to his feet, grabbing his flashlight. His mouth felt as dry as cotton as he cautiously stepped forward, seconds from receiving the shock of his life. Before he could react, something jumped out of the woods. Two somethings. Two bodies. Mr. Irwin leaped back, close to urinating himself before realizing that the two bodies were two of his students. Although almost double their age, he felt he was more relieved and happy to see them than they were to see him. After a few seconds of shining his flashlight on them, he realized their eyes were bulging out of their heads and that Jill was holding her arm, barely able to walk. Mr. Irwin bolted towards them and found Jill close to collapsing. Even through the yellow light he could tell she was deadly pale. Blood gushed down her arm and leg. Mr. Irwin asked what happened. For a second the two students were speechless. Then Mitch spoke up, telling him they had been attacked. Mr. Irwin asked if it had been by an animal, but Mitch simply shook his head vigorously. Mr. Irwin kept incessantly telling himself he needed to be headstrong. He, Scotty, and Mitch carried a wounded Jill back down the mountain. Thick, twisted roots and jutting, uneven rocks scattered the path as if attempting to prevent them from achieving their goal. They took turns carrying Jill in twos, with the other person illuminating the path. Mr. Irwin shakily asked the coordinator what he thought had attacked Jill. He had to hold back vomit. Despite the cold of the night, sweat saturated him. That whisper, those predatory eyes, they wouldn't leave him alone. Scotty replied, saying it had probably only been a deer or elk. This left Mr. Irwin envious. The coordinator sounded collected and full of breath, as though carrying half a teenager around his neck, and speaking as he maneuvered a treacherous path was nothing. Scotty also suggested that she could have just panicked and tangled herself in some sharp branches. Mr. Irwin caught Mitch's face when light beamed over it and saw Mitch wasn't buying that, and he made that known, telling them that the bite marks over her arms and legs showed a dangerous predator. Mr. Irwin heard Scotty denying such an accusation, but he believed Mitch was onto something. The red and ominous eyes still burned in his mind, as did the cold death whisper, "I will get you."